Hey guys, Paul Rick here. Welcome back to another edition of the Baseball Dad Show. Are you worried that your son might get burnt out on the game of baseball? Is it possible that maybe his career is out of rhythm? We're going to tackle these questions and a few more on this edition of the Baseball Dad Show. Before we do that, head on over to baseballdadShow.com. There's a ton of great information over there. We have a scorecard on, you could see if your son's ready to play at the next level. There's also a cut and paste email dialogue on how to ask your son's coach for more playing time. There's a link to our Facebook group, which is awesome, our Facebook discussion group. And then there's also a link to our new course that is specifically for baseball dads called The Guardian. So head on over to baseballdadShow.com. So let me ask you this question. Super Bowl is about a month ago now. Tom Brady, unbelievable. I mean, seriously. It could be a whole other podcast, but he's kind of eclipsed a level that you can't even, there's nothing more you can say, right? The guy just finds a way to get it done. And I think he's kind of fallen into this group of players that is kind of like LeBron James or Kobe Bryant or Jeter or even like Big Papi. It's like, you might not like their team, and you might not like that they win, and maybe they're not your cup of tea, but you can't deny the greatness that is out there. So, incredible. And funniest thing is, I watched the Super Bowl in about a 4-minute highlight reel on SportsCenter because I was fast asleep when that game was decided. But football is not my thing. And the reason why, so many now dads, I'm 45, as I've said a lot of times, so many dads are into football that are my, friends and kind of in the same neighborhood and community that I am in. And I'm not. And the reason I'm not into football is because of baseball. And when I say that to a lot of dads, they always say like, oh, because you like baseball more than football. I'm like, no, it's because for about 14 years, we held baseball clinics on Sundays, like all day. I would work from like 7 a.m. to like 8 p.m. or sometimes later at night doing baseball clinics and instruction and lessons and stuff like that. So the football world completely passed me by. So by the time I was done with that, I was kind of like, you mean the Giants got rid of Leonard Marshall? He was awesome. And like my friends were like, yeah, Leonard Marshall's like already in the Hall of Fame now. Like he's been retired for about 12 years. So that was the reason why I don't watch football. So I got off on a little bit of a tangent there. But Tom Brady. So let's say Tom Brady, the day after the Super Bowl, he said, I want to start training for next year. I want to double up my workouts. I want to get a little bit leaner. I want to get a little bit lighter that maybe I can move around in the pocket more. I could do more things, or I could run with the ball, or maybe I want to bulk up so I can take hits a little bit more. And I want to start getting to work right now. And he went to hire a trainer and hire people to help him do that. What do you think those people would tell him? The very first thing that all of those people would tell him was, dude, you need a break. Let's first recover from this season, and then let's go on to the next season. Let's create a plan. Let's create a rhythm to this, because there's a rhythm of the season, then there's a rhythm of recovery from the season, just kind of shutting everything off. And then there's a rhythm of kind of maybe if there's any injuries that you repair, and then there's a prepare and a building phase, and then a preparation for the season, and this season, and round we go. So what's interesting, let me backtrack. What if Tom Brady had tweeted, just won the Super Bowl, doubling up my workouts, want to win number 7, want to go undefeated, want to be league MVP, Super Bowl champ, Super Bowl MVP? What would the reaction have been from Patriot Nation? Their minds would have exploded, right? It would have been retweeted and liked and shared and posted and reposted all over the place. They would have been calling Brady the GOAT. They would have said, this is it, grind, hustle, 24/7, no sleep, all wins. He would have got so much praise for what is really over-functioning. In baseball, our young men are burning out at levels like never before. Now, You might be listening to this and saying, my son loves baseball. My son eats, sleeps, breathes, and thinks of baseball. He'll never get burned out. Be careful. Because I talk to dads every single day whose sons are burnt out from baseball. And a year ago, their fathers thought that day would never come. I am a person that could eat, sleep, breathe baseball. It's in my bones. So I understand how you think. But we also have to understand that what worked for us is not going to work for our children. And the problem that we've run into, and the reason, this was a podcast that I planned on doing later in the year as the season kind of wound down to talk about rhythms, but I bumped it up because as we're recording this in early March 2019, baseball seasons are starting to ramp up. And I have gotten calls from dads whose sons don't want to go in and play baseball. And now we're saying, I don't know if I want to go out for the team, or I don't know if I want to play this spring, or I don't know. And this is after they've been preparing all winter and been gearing up for it, and it's been part of their lifestyle. And I've seen this a lot over the years. I've seen one of our most famous stories we've told 100 times of the kid who was going to go to college and came and told his dad, I don't want to go to college to play baseball. And it usually happens at these breaking points, right, where they're kind of going along, playing along. And then all of a sudden now it's like, okay, now the season's going to start, or I have to go play on this team, or I've got to go move to college. And it kind of like gets where if it takes the next step, it's really going to be big. And then kids just say, forget it. I'm just going to, come clean, and I'm burnt out. And here's the thing that bothers me. And the thing that bothers me the most is, and I've spoken to a few kids. I don't tend to do a lot of, it's not my thing to work with kids. I think really that should be a really specific thing. But there have been a few dads who wanted me to speak to their son, and I've spoken to them while their dad was on the phone. And these kids, they don't hate baseball. They're not tired of baseball. They do love baseball. They're just burnt out of it. They love it, but they maybe don't love it 9 months a year or 12 months a year. And they have a lot of different interests, or they like to explore different interests. And what bothers me the most about this is that is not the kid's problem. And even the dads that I've worked with, I said, go ask your son if he hates baseball. And no kid has come back and said, I hate baseball. They're burnt out. They don't love it 12 months of the year. This is not a kid's problem. This is an adult-created problem. And why I say that is no kid, no 10, 11, 12-year-old kid, or even 15-year-old kid, none of those kids build an off-season training program to play baseball 12 months a year. They get thrust into that because adults kind of tell them how the rhythms go. And so now, as we enter the spring, a podcast that I meant to do towards the end of the year last year to talk about taking a break as the season winds down has moved up to the beginning of the year, because now we got kids who aren't going to play a game that they genuinely like in the spring and summer when it was meant to be played, because they've spent so much time in the winter and the fall dedicated to a sport when it's like not meant to be played. And it breaks my heart, because my bigger concern is the game itself. Is, are we driving out players that could be great players, that could develop into college players or professional players, or even major leaguers, or just at the very least just have a great enjoyable time playing the game, maybe through high school? Are we driving those players out of the game early because we're failing to establish rhythms? Let's go back to Tom Brady. How do you think Tom Brady would be if he didn't take a break to wind down from the season? How do you think Tom Brady would be if he doubled up his workouts? How do you think if he shed weight or gained weight or changed his game, or if he over-functioned for too long? What do you think is going to happen to even the great Tom Brady? At some point, there's going to be a breaking point. Either that breaking point is going to be physical in the form of exhaustion or injury, or it's just going to be mental fatigue, whatever. Something's going to break. And that is a professional athlete who is paid really well to do that vocationally. So what is that going to say? How do our kids get out of rhythm when they've got so much stuff to do, schoolwork, et cetera, and all this other kind of stuff, and then we're creating this kind of monster for them to train for baseball year round? So I would ask you to think about those rhythms. And I don't want us to drive a kid out of the game that loves the game, but just doesn't love it 9 or 12 months of the year, or at least wants to miss it a little bit. Wants to miss it a little bit. You know, there was an interesting thing. This might feel like a hard left, but I don't know. If you're of my age, you know, which I'm sure you're somewhat around, you remember the world when there were only 3 Star Wars movies, right? And then you remember the world when there was a big gap, and then there was like 3 more Star Wars movies. And then, so for the first, I guess it is 43 years of my life, there were 6 Star Wars movies. And in the last 2 years, there have been 4 Star Wars movies, and another one coming. So in the span of whatever it is, 3-4 years, there'll be like 5 Star Wars movies, right? So like my children, like they've got more Star Wars movies in the first 10 years of their life than I had in like the first 35. And what happened is people got fatigued. It was too much. It was like too many movies right after each other, and they just got fatigued. Even with Tom Brady. You know, this year's Super Bowl was the lowest rated Super Bowl, I forget how many years, but it was a significant amount of time. And they blamed it really to 2 things. Like, it wasn't a great, like, halftime show. Right? There wasn't, like, a big celebrity at the halftime. But they also, the bigger factor was Patriot fatigue. That people had just grown tired of watching the Patriots play in the Super Bowl and win. You know, even though it's kind of exciting. So I just want us to be very, very careful about the rhythms of the season. And the advice that I would give you, again, every podcast, we're going to point to your son at 23 years old. We're going to point to him at 23. So a lot of times when dads are put into this position where they want to put their kid into a year-round program or even an aggressive program, say 9 months or some off-season training, there's usually pressure to do that from another adult who is telling you that if you do this, you'll get X, and if you don't do this, it will cost you Y. Now, my advice to you, again, it all looks easy from behind the microphone, but my advice to you would be to look very closely at the motives of the person that is telling you that it will get you X or cost you Y. And then I want you to think about, do you really want your son in an environment like that? The other thing I want you to think about is that your son at the age of 23, do you want him at age 23 to have had a great experience in baseball, where maybe he played some high school or all the way through high school, or maybe even some college, and had a great experience all the way through? Or do you want a kid who burnt out at 12, 13, or 14 years old, left the game, and then did not get all that experience from playing sports? I have a friend who runs a business that he specifically looks for college athletes to hire in his business. Specifically looks for them. That if he sees somebody played athletics in college, he's more apt to hire that person than someone really more qualified, because he knows of the discipline that comes with having to be a college athlete. So I want you to think of in the long term. When your son is 23 years old, we want him to have a positive experience playing as far as God's gifts can bring him in the game of baseball. We want him to have all of the benefits that a long baseball career would have, all of the leadership benefits, the sportsmanship, the teamwork, all of the friendships, and just going through ups and downs together as a team, the bonding, right, the brotherhood that comes with that, the exposure to great coaches and leaders that he would be exposed to at a higher level. None of those things he can be exposed to if he's cut off from the game at a younger age. Just like if Tom Brady overfunctions and gets himself hurt, he would cut himself off from what might be the opportunity to have a huge Super Bowl comeback. So I want you to be very conscious of the rhythms of the baseball season. And again, I plan this for later on, but as we enter this season, be conscious of the macro rhythms are something that's kind of, lost its way. And the macro rhythms, I'm meaning like off-season, strength build, preseason, in-season, recovery season, those seasons. Those are macro seasons. But one of the things you can immediately do is be very conscious of the micro rhythms of the season. Does he need a day off? Does he need some time to just go be a kid? Does he need some time to veg out in front of the Xbox? Does he need to just go to the movies with his dad instead of going to the batting cages again? Does he need to do that? Now, here's a flip side as we wind down this podcast. The flip side is I'll get dads who say, all he wants to do is baseball. When he has free time, he just wants to go hit. He just wants to go to this. I get that. But at 23 years old, you want your son to have a wide range of talents, abilities, and experiences, and you also want him to understand balance. Balance. That you're the parent, you're the one who creates that balance. So I've said this before on many podcasts, if we let our kids decide what they want to eat for dinner every night, they're going to eat, like M&Ms and Cheetos, right? Every day. There's nothing wrong with some M&Ms and Cheetos, but you can't have it every day, right? There's nothing wrong with being committed and disciplined and dedicated to baseball, but there has to be a balance. There has to be, because again, guys, I'm speaking from experience. I almost feel like the dads that I talk to on the phone every day are the ones that write these podcasts, because it's the issues I'm learning from those dads that we bring here, and the issues that we are hearing is that kids and I get to see it from a bigger view. I get to see it from a 30,000 foot view, because I'll talk to one dad of an 18-year-old and one dad of an 8-year-old and a 12-year-old, 10-year-old, and I kind of see how the issues play out. I see what happens to the 16-year-old who doesn't create balance. And I'm trying to educate the 8-year-old dad who's trying to figure out how to strike balance. And so I see it from both sides. And I will tell you this, I've never had a dad who had a balanced approach that did not have success. It's always the ones that did not that ended up with, this issue of their kids being out of rhythm or getting burnt out and leaving the game. So I feel like I'm rambling a little bit. I think we've concluded this podcast. So again, just be very conscious of the macro rhythms of the season, but also conscious of what we could do now as we enter the season is the micro rhythms of the season. There's definitely times to take a break, take a day off, go do some kids stuff, let them have some free time. Even if they want to go out and do baseball, it's your job as a dad to create a healthy variety and a healthy balance of their activities and not to have them skewed one way. So again, thank you guys so much for listening. Head on over to Baseball Dad Show. All that cool stuff I talked to you about is over there. And again, guys, thank you so much for listening. It means the world to me. And I'll see you right back here next week.